does microfinance serve? Let me tell you the story of Rosalba. And this actually is a client that went through a Women's Initiative program as well. Rosalba is an immigrant from Mexico. And when she was young, she used to work at a juice stand that was owned by her aunt. She has really fond memories of that. Came to this country, figured out that all the skills that she had built in Mexico really didn't transfer over when she was here. So she worked in janitorial businesses, she worked a little bit in childcare, and did that for 20 years. And finally, she kind of put her foot down. And she said, you know, I really want to own my own business. I can do this. I want to be more self-sufficient. I don't want to have to rely on somebody else to pay my bills. And she thought about her youth and said, hey, my sister and I, we should really do this juice stand thing. So she went through a training program, and then ultimately said, all right, now I'm ready. Now I need money. Where do I go? So her and her sister, they managed to save $7,000 of their own money to put towards this business. But they needed around $17,000. So where's the extra $10,000 going to come from? They had okay credit. Well, Rosalba had decent credit. And she knew that she wanted to pay her bills on time. She handled that pretty well. She had a couple of credit cards, but knew not to spend too much. So she handled her personal financials pretty well. Her sister didn't have any credit history. So this was someone who really operated on a cash-based, and very cash-based. They rented, didn't own a home. So you knew that if the two of them walked into a bank and said, hi, we're here to apply for a small business loan, they would have gotten a pretty fast and strict no. You have no collateral, you're low income, start a business, limited or no credit. So that's who microfinance serves in the United States. But these are the individuals that have home-based businesses, that are immigrants, that are really trying to find self-sufficiency here, but when they go to a bank, they don't fit the underwriting criteria there. One of the key questions that we're always asked, and we might go into a little bit more in depth today, is what are the differences between international microfinance and domestic microfinance? And for me, it really boils down to one thing. The business and cultural environment here is so different than it is internationally, and so that means that our business model has to be really different. Number one, starting a business in the United States is more expensive and just more complex than it is internationally. You could spend $100, $200 internationally and maybe get all the inventory you need to get going. Here, it doesn't even print your business cards. So there's a lot more money that's needed just to get going. In addition, there's a lot of rules and regulations here. You walk into any city office and you ask them, hey, I'm looking to start a business, they're going to hand you a packet that thick about all the licenses and permits and regulations that you need to follow. So there's this portion of education that clients need here in order to be successful in businesses that you might not actually need abroad. And for us, that translates into technical assistance. So that means that when we're working with people that are starting businesses, there's a lot more training involved, there's a lot more education that's involved. Secondly, there's a lot more strict guidelines about lending in general here. So there's limitations to what we can charge in our interest rates, which is a good thing for our clients. We tend to charge something that's in between what banks would charge and what a credit card would charge. But when you go to international microfinance, they have a lot higher rates and therefore can charge more, earn more income. Another thing about the small business owners here is they're very dispersed. So everything from geography and where they live and where they operate their business, to what kinds of businesses they're operating, to the size of the businesses that they want to operate and the size of the loans that they need. So there's a very low concentration of borrowers, versus when you think and talk about international microfinance, you're usually talking about this kind of village-based idea. There's usually something like someone has either an animal and they're selling animal products, or they have goods and they're selling good products. So there's very typical types of businesses, versus again here, there's a lot more diversity in that. In addition, we think that in the US, as Camille has really said, it's not so much about earning income that makes the difference. Getting out of poverty is actually about assets. It's building assets that are transferable by generations. And so there's a lot of emphasis on asset building here, and to us that's part of the definition of microfinance, and that doesn't really exist internationally. So I think there's a couple of impacts on that are really important. I think the first one is cost. Again, people like to talk about self-sufficiency, and it's a very common topic when you think about international microfinance. And I think that though that's a metric that we certainly use domestically as well, it's simply much more expensive to operate a microfinance organization domestically than it is internationally. And the second thing that's different is scale. So when you talk about scale of international microfinancing, you're talking about the 3 largest microfinance institutions in India serving 7 million clients. Compare that to Opportunity Fund probably has the largest portfolio of borrowers for small business in the Bay Area, and we've served 800 clients, done 800 loans in the past 10 years. So there's a really big scale difference between those two. All right, so who are we anyways? Opportunity Fund was founded by Eric in 1995, and we focus on helping individuals, families, and communities earn, save, and invest. So there's 3 main programs that we operate. The first one is our small business or micro loan program. So these are loans to low-income owned businesses. The second is our IDA or individual development account, which is exactly what Camille had mentioned before from EARN. And lastly, we have a community real estate program. So this is investing and lending to the developers of affordable housing, community facilities like healthcare facilities, and schools. For the sake of today, we're really defining microfinance more as the IDA program and the small business program. Those are what we really consider as microfinance. So some specific details about these. Our small business loans are from $1,000 up to $200,000, and they are at fixed interest rates, usually ranging between 8% to 10%. These are at 1 to 7 year terms. So though the money is generally what attracts a client to come to the door for us, really what's impactful is the education piece. And I think there's 2 parts to that. There's part of the money management, financial literacy portion, and then there's the business and technical assistance portion. So as an example, a client comes to us, gives us a phone call, wonders what we do, we get them hooked up with a loan consultant. Loan consultant will sit down with them and say, hey, do you know what credit is? Do you know what your credit score is? Do you know why it's important? And actually walk them through that whole process. Look at their credit report with them and say, okay, so it looks like you're good at X, Y, and Z. Now the next step for you to improve is A, B, and C. In addition to that, each of our applicants will meet with a business advisor one-on-one. And the whole purpose there is to flesh out what is your business plan and make sure you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know what you're getting into essentially. On our match savings account, this is exactly like Camille said, it's almost like a 401k-like savings account where each individual sets aside a certain amount of money every single month that's matched generally 2 to 1 and invested towards either education, towards a small business, or towards home ownership. A lot more numbers. Numbers make me happy. So our portfolio, we are a very performance-driven organization. We look at numbers a lot. Just to summarize a little bit, so over the 10 years, we've made about 800 loans, and our borrowers generally are really good at paying us back. Our historical charge-off rate was around 5 to 7%. That has gone up to about 9% now, and that is due to the economic climate. On the IDA side, we do have 2,500 cumulative counts that are saving over the past 10 years. And even more numbers. A lot of people like to ask again about this whole concept of self-sufficiency. How does your money work? Can you get to the point where you are profitable, etc.? So just to share the actual numbers with you, our earned income, which includes government contracts, includes interest, it includes fees, is on average about $500,000 a year. Our expenses are $1 million a year. So cost recovery-wise, we're about 50% self-sufficiency, and then 35% if you include overhead and admin. The point behind all of this is that we look at these metrics, we strive to get them better, but I do want to emphasize that our goal is not ultimately to be 100% self-sufficient. I think our goal is to provide quality service to our clients and have an impact on the communities, and that's going to be paramount to where these numbers stand. Community impact-wise, we also have done longitudinal studies to understand what we've actually impacted in the communities, and we see that the businesses that we've given loans to have an 85% survival rate, which is a lot higher than the national average. We also see that household income increases, business income increases, and they're creating a lot more jobs.